Let's learn Japanese with Papa. What's the difference between teiru and tearu? Hello everyone, this is Michael. Welcome back to another video. If you're new here, I usually create videos for the Japanese language learners in Japanese. But guess what? Today, I may challenge myself and speak in English. My pronunciation needs work, but don't worry. I've added English and Japanese subs as usual. Alright, let's give this a try. Here we go. Hey, Popper. 今日はアンドロメダ銀河がいつもより輝いてあるね。Yeah, it's beautiful. By the way, when in that case, you don't say 輝いてある, but say 輝いている. For real? I thought it should be ある instead of いる because a galaxy is not a living thing. Ah, when they say did something, yeah, you're right. You should use ある for an inanimate object and use いる for an animate one. A galaxy is an inanimate object, so you'd say 銀河がある. But てある or ている that adds ある or いる to the tail form of a verb is a different thing. Okay, let me try to explain the difference between ている and てある now. Teiru. I think some of you already know that teiru is a present continuous tense and used to show ongoing actions. But actually, it's an expression with 6 meanings in total, including the one for ongoing actions. Alright, let's go through those 6 one by one. ている、進行中の動作 ongoing actions. The first one, as mentioned earlier, is the teiru, which is a present progressive verb form that shows the action is ongoing. 今、雨が降っている. It is raining now. 今、川沿いを歩いています. I'm walking along the river now. This is the tail form of a verb which expresses that an action is ongoing, regardless of whether the subject is animate or inanimate. After, it's the same usage as what you were trying to say earlier with アンドロメダ銀河が輝いている. The Andromeda galaxy is shining. Ah, right. I knew the present progressive tense was ている, but I got confused with てある. I see. I'll explain more about ている later, but いる in ている is an auxiliary helping verb. Auxiliary verbs are verbs that have lost their original meaning and usage and are used to help another verb. So the いる in ている doesn't directly carry the meaning of presence that original verb いる has. Instead, it represents a state in which an action is ongoing, a state that is still the result of a past action, which I'll describe next, and 4 other meanings. Alright, now let's move on to the second ている I just mentioned, which shows a state where the result of an action is still continuing. ている 動作結果の継続 continuation of the result of an action. Before explaining what it means for the result of an action to continue, let me talk a bit about verb types. Verbs can be divided into action verbs, which show actions, and stative verbs, which show states. Action verbs are further divided into continuous verbs and instantaneous verbs. Continuous verbs are verbs like to eat, 食べる, to swim, 泳ぐ, to read, 読む, or to study, 勉強する, which take time to complete the action. On the other hand, instantaneous verbs are verbs like to stand up, 立つ, to break, 割れる, to begin, 始める, and to end, 終わる, where the action finishes instantly. If you put the continuous verb to eat in the present progressive tense, which explicits an ongoing action, you get 食べている eating, right? If you try to represent 食べている eating in terms of time, it'll look something like this. 食べる to eat. 食べていない not eating. 食べている eating. 食べた ate. 食べていない not eating. The word 食べている indicates the very state of munching food in your mouth from the time you start eating to the time you finish eating, doesn't it? The tail form of continuous verbs indicates an ongoing action between the beginning and the end of that action. This is the first tail I explained earlier. Okay, next, I'll use the instantaneous verb 割れる to pop to describe the situation when the balloon pops on the time axis. 割れる to pop. 割れていない not popped. 割れた popped. 割れている is popped. The action of a balloon popping is over in an instant unless you film it in slow motion, right? So the state during the action is barely visible to the human eye, and right now, the balloon is in a popped state. 割れている describes the state of the balloon after it instantly popped, with the air escaping and the balloon now deflated. The tail form of instantaneous verbs represents a state in which the result of an action that started and ended instantly remains unchanged. And that was the second use of tail that I wanted to explain. お皿が割れている. The plate is broken. 私は結婚しています. I am married. 彼は窓際に立っている. He's standing by the window. When it comes to 立つ, to stand up, or 座る, to sit down, considering them instantaneous verbs can be tricky because their actions aren't as quick as something like a balloon popping. But when you stand up from a sitting position or sit down from a standing position, those actions only last for a moment, right? No one says I'm standing to describe the moment when you start getting up from a chair until you are fully standing. And no one calls the action of going from standing to bending your knees and lowering yourself until your butt touches the chair sitting either. So both to stand up, 立つ, and to sit down, 座る, are classified as instantaneous verbs in Japanese. And the result of completing the action of standing up or sitting down is a continuous state of standing or sitting. So do you get it? Do you understand how Taylor expresses the continuation of a result? テイル、習慣的、繰り返しの動作。habitual repeated actions. The third tail is the one that expresses repetition or habit. 彼は毎日ジムに通っている。He goes to the gym every day. 毎朝6時にジョギングをしています。I go jogging every morning at 6 a.m. この川は台風が来るたびに氾濫している。This river overflows every time a typhoon comes. As you saw in the example sentences, this kind of content is expressed in the present tense in English, but in Japanese, it is expressed using ている. When you do the same thing regularly, or when something happens periodically, you can use ている to show it's a habit. The tail form when expressing a habit is used with words that indicate a cycle, such as always, いつも, every day, 毎日, every week, 毎週, every 4 years, 4年ごとに, and every time, 何々のたびに. 彼は毎日ジムに通っている。He goes to the gym every day. 毎朝6時にジョギングをしています。I go jogging every morning at 6 a.m. この川は台風が来るたびに氾濫している。This river overflows every time a typhoon comes. Oh, and this tale can also be used to talk about jobs, as it implies a semi-permanent habit. 私はピアノを教えています。I teach piano for a living. 私はピアノの教師をしている。I am a piano teacher. うちの母は小説を書いている。My mother writes novels for a living. うちの母は小説家をしています。My mother is a novelist. When asked, what do you do for a living? Saying something like that sounds more sophisticated than saying, 私はピアノの先生です。or うちの母は小説家です。テイル、経験、experience. The first use of テイル is the one that expresses experience. Are you familiar with the expression 何々したことがある to have done something when talking about experience? When simply bringing up the topic of someone's or your experience, you can only use 何々したことがある to have done something. However, when connecting that past experience to the main topic you are about to discuss, you can use 以前に何々している to have done something before. 彼は7年前に事故に遭ったことがある。He had an accident 7 years ago. 彼は7年前に事故に遭っています。だから、その時期の記憶がないんです。He had an accident 7 years ago, so he doesn't remember anything from that time. 私は以前、大橋さんに会ったことがある。I have met 大橋さん before. 私は以前、大橋さんに会っている。だから、私と初対面だというのは嘘だ。I've met 大橋さん before, so he's saying this is our first meeting is a lie. 大学時代に日本に留学したことがある。I studied abroad in Japan during my college years. 大学時代に日本に留学しているので、日本語には自信があります。I studied abroad in Japan during my college years, so I'm confident in my Japanese. You can use 何々したことがある in the second sentence of each example, but using 何々している would sound more advanced. Also, I wonder if anyone else had noticed this. In English, the present perfect, which is used to express experience, can't be used with words that refer to a specific time, right? But in Japanese, both 何々したことがある and 何々している, which express experience, can be used with words that indicate a specific time. That's why when Japanese people use the present perfect in English, we sometimes accidentally end up using words that refer to a specific time. 彼は7年前に事故に遭ったことがある。He had an accident 7 years ago. 彼は7年前に事故に遭っています。だから、その時期の記憶がないんです。He had an accident 7 years ago, so he doesn't remember anything from that time. 大学時代に日本に留学したことがある。I studied abroad in Japan during my college years. 大学時代に日本に留学しているので、日本語には自信があります。I studied abroad in Japan during my college years, so I'm confident in my Japanese. By the way, you can say 彼は7年前に事故に遭いました。The past tense. He had an accident 7 years ago. Or 大学時代に日本に留学していた the past tense. I studied abroad in Japan during my college years. But those feel like you're simply describing things you did or things that happened in the past. On the other hand, using 何々している gives the impression that the effects of what happened or was done in the past are still ongoing. ている動作の完了 completion of the action. Okay, the first one is the ている that indicates the completion of the action. この時間だとあの店はもう閉まっているな。At this time, that restaurant has already closed. え、金庫の中身がなくなってる。Wait, the contents of the safe have gone. 見たかった映画がもう終わってる。The movie I wanted to watch has already ended. I think many people are probably wondering, how is this different from the continuation of the result of an action that was explained at the second use of Taylor in this video? The shop restaurant reached its closing time and shimatta, it closed. The continuation of that result is the shimatteiru closed state. However, with the fifth teiru, the focus is different. It's more about focusing on the completion of the action itself rather than its result. Let's say you and your coworker worked overtime and left the office later than usual. Both of you were hungry and went grab dinner before heading home. Your coworker says, "How about going to that restaurant we went to before?" But when you check the time, it's already past 9 p.m. and the restaurant closes at 9. This means the place is already in a state after it has closed. It has finished business for the day. The has closed state, the state in which the action has been completed, can also be expressed as 閉まってしまっている or 閉まっちゃっている. When using 閉まって to indicate the completion of the action, the speaker often includes a sense of regret or surprise about the result. However, you can omit the 閉まった part and use 閉まっている to indicate the completion of the action. この時間だと、あの店はもう閉まっているな。At this time, the shop restaurant has already closed. この店は開いているけど、隣の店は閉まっている。This shop is open, but the one next door is closed. The 閉まっている used for the continuation of the result describes a state of stillness, such as a shop's door suddenly closed and its lights turned off. On the other hand, the completion usage of 閉まっている focuses on the staff having finished closing the doors and shutters, turning off the lights, and leaving. ている、性質、状態 characteristics and states. The sixth and final teilu expresses the nature or state of a person or thing. この道は大きく右に曲がっている。This road curves sharply to the right. 猫は動体視力にとても優れている。Cats have excellent dynamic vision. 窓の外には大きな山がそびえている。A large mountain rises outside the window. When you say the road curves, it doesn't mean that a straight road has changed and become curved. It simply describes the natural shape of the road. When you say that cats have excellent dynamic vision, you don't mean that they suddenly developed this ability at some point in their lives. Rather, it's an innate trait. they're adjectives that describe the characteristic or stage of a person or thing. For example, she is kind, 優しい, or this apple is sour, 酸っぱい. This tail works like an adjective, just like saying, this road is narrow, この道は細い. The cat is good at jumping, 猫はジャンプが得意だ. Or the mountain is so close, 山が近い. When translating English adjectives into Japanese, it's easy to understand when they become adjectives in Japanese as well, like cute, かわいい, or wide, 広い. But there are many cases when adjective does not remain an adjective in Japanese, such as stable, 安定している, and blurry, ぼやけている, which are examples of the sixth usage of ている. ている、まとめ。Summary of ている。1、継続動詞の進行中の動作。1. Ongoing action of a continuous verb. 2. 瞬間動詞の動作結果の継続。2. Continuation of the result of an instantaneous verb. 3. 習慣、繰り返しの動作。3. Habitual or repeated action. 4. 経験、experience. 5. 話し手の主観を含められる動作の完了。5. Completion of the action, possibly with the speaker's subjective nuance. 6. 性質、状態、形容詞的用法、述語的。6. Characteristics or states. Adjectival usage, predicative. てある。Alright, now we can finally move on to learning about てある. There were 6 different uses of ている, but there are only 2 for てある, so don't worry. Before I get into the explanation of the 2 uses, there's one thing I want to mention first. でいる in ている is an auxiliary verb, but である in ている isn't. So the ある in ている really does include the meaning of the verb ある about something being located in a particular place. Okay, with that in mind, I'll explain the first である, which means continuation of intended action results. である、意図的な動作結果の状況描写。Depicting the result of an intentional action. The first である indicates that someone has intentionally performed an action and its result still remains in the present. However, the subject of である is not the person who performed the action, but rather the object that remains as a result of the action. 玄関に百合の花が飾ってある。There are lilies decorated at the entrance. 手紙が机の上に置いてあります。There's a letter placed on the desk. 部屋の窓が開けてある。The window in the room is left open. The subjects of sentences with てある are the objects of the action, and the verbs use the active て form. Huh? When the subject and object that is not a person, isn't the verb supposed to be in the passive voice? Are there any of you out there who think so? Right. You can use the passive voice of 飾る to say 花が飾られている or the passive voice of 置く to say 手紙が置かれている. But in sentences using the passive and ている, it's like simply stating the state of the thing that is the subject. By contrast, the active and てある gives the sense that someone has done the action and that result remain in the object, which is then the subject. I guess it can mean the thing which someone has done something to is in the state it is in. ものが誰かがそれに何かしてその状態のままある。And I think that's why the verb is in the active voice even though the subject is an object. Well, I couldn't find anything online about whether that's a good reason, so it's just my personal take on it though. 玄関に百合の花が誰かがそれを飾ってその状態のままある。The lilies at the entrance, which someone has decorated, are in the state they are in. 玄関に百合の花が飾ってある。There are lilies decorated at the entrance. 手紙が誰かがそれを机の上に置いてその状態のままあります。The letter, which someone has placed on the desk, is in the state it is in. 手紙が机の上に置いてあります。There's a letter placed on the desk. 部屋の窓が誰かがそれを開けてその状態のままある。The window of the room which someone has opened is in the state it is in. 部屋の窓が開けてある。The window in the room is left open. Actually, the people performing the actions in those examples aren't mentioned anywhere in the sentences, but the active voice makes you aware of their presence. Also, it gives the sense that the resulting state left in the object was done intentionally by those people. 手ある、準備の完了。Completion of the preparations. The second tale shows that something has been prepared, or is all set and ready. In this case too, the subject is an object, and the verb is in the active tense form, but the person performing the action, though not mentioned in the sentence, isn't some random person. It's the speaker. 明日の会議の資料はもう準備してある。I've already prepared the materials for the meeting tomorrow. 飛行機のチケットはもう予約してある。I've already booked the flight tickets. おやつにドーナツを買ってあるよ。I've got donuts set aside for a snack. Did you notice that I changed the subject of the example sentences in the English translations to I? If you follow the structure of the Japanese sentence, you could say, the materials for the meeting tomorrow have been prepared, right? But when you say tearu to mean completion of the preparations, I feel like it expresses the speaker's sense of accomplishment or the feeling they want to convey. So, in the English translations, I intentionally made the subject I to emphasize the fact that it's the speaker who's all set, rather than focusing on the prepared things. If you interpret the Japanese example sentences as meaning the following, you might figure out why the active voice is used for the verbs. 明日の会議の資料については、私がもう準備してある。As for the materials for the meeting tomorrow, I've already prepared it. 明日の会議の資料はもう準備してある。I've already prepared the materials for the meeting tomorrow. 飛行機のチケットについては、私がもう予約してある。As for the flight tickets, I've already booked them. 飛行機のチケットはもう予約してある。I've already booked the flight tickets. In Japanese, when a noun is placed at the beginning of a sentence with the particle wa, it can sometimes be interpreted as the subject and other times as the topic. So I think that's how you should interpret the two example sentences now. Alright, now let's talk about the third example. Can you tell the difference between the first two examples and the third one? Let's take another look at the example sentences. 明日の会議の資料はもう準備してある。飛行機のチケットはもう予約してある。おやつにドーナツを買ってあるよ。Right. In the third example, it's using を instead of は。What I mean is that in the third example, the subject I is dropped and the donuts are the object that I buy. てある that indicates the completion of the preparation shows the topic by using は with the object or shows the object of the action by using を. Now, let's check what particle is used when the first dialogue is depicting the result of an intentional action. 玄関に百合の花が飾ってある。手紙が机の上に置いてあります。部屋の窓が開けてある。が is used in all of them. That's because the sentences with the first dialogue are describing a situation you are seeing for the first time. When talking about something or a situation you've just seen, noticed, or discovered for the first time, が is used. てある、まとめ。Summary of てある。1、意図的な動作結果の状況描写。1. Depicting the result of an intentional action. 主語にはがを使う。動詞は能動体の定型。が is used for the subject. The verb is in the active tail form. 2. 準備の完了。2. Completion of the preparations. 主題提示としてはは、目的語にはを使う。動詞は能動体の定型。は is used as the topic marker, or は is used for the object. The verb is in the active tail form. Popper, thanks for explaining it. Now I won't mess them up anymore. I ended up explaining a lot, but I'm glad I could help. Okay, thank you so much to everyone who listened to my imperfect English. This was my first attempt, but what did you think? Feel free to share your advice, thoughts, or anything else in the comments. Alright, that's all for today. Thanks for watching and thanks for subscribing to my channel. See you in the next video. Bye.